All right, race fans, Ryan Aho here and the one and only Bert Lehman. Bert, you're donning some red. What do you got going on here tonight?
Well, as we're recording this on Tuesday night, in, I don't know, a half hour or so, the Wisconsin Badgers are going to be playing the Purdue Boilermakers in men's basketball with first place in the conference on the line. So got to support the team.
Is basketball even a sport? People watch that? Like, seriously? I mean, in the Northland here, we know hockey. I know Puka's getting ramped up for the state hockey tournaments. And, of course, we got football. Basketball, I don't know. Maybe there's one or two fans that maybe will watch basketball. Let's talk about a real sport. Let's talk about dirt track racing. And episode 118 brought to you by our friends in Watertown, South Dakota, Dirt Track Supply. Get a hold of Ron, get a hold of Trevor. They'll take good care of you. Whether you need parts, you need service, you need a new chassis, they build the Aero chassis. They're your at-track supplier at a lot of different racetracks over in that region. They've been doing it for a long time. Give those guys a call, Dirt Track Supply over in Watertown. But let's start, Bert, with a blast to the past like we always do, episode number 118. Of course, a blast to the past brought to you by Impact Health Sharing. Self-employed people, I don't care if you got to pay for your own health care. If you're a business owner, a farmer, whatever it is, if you're in sales, if you're paying for your own health care, shoot me a message on Facebook, Ryan Aho, shoot me a message. I'll get you a quote. Man, I've been saving people a pile of money, literally cutting it in half for a lot of people. You can go to any doctor, no particular network. So it's been incredible. Give me a chance. I'll see if I can maybe help you out, have a little more money to put into that racing program. But Bert, number 118. Do you have any number 118s?
I do not have a 118.
I literally thought about it at the last minute. I don't know why I didn't think about it till today, but there was a number 118, Todd Gillitzer. We call him Dobie up on the Iron Range up in Hibbing. He had a super stock number 118, and I'm looking to see if he texted me, and he did not. I was trying to figure out what in the hell, why was he number 118? So I don't really know the story. Maybe somebody can post that in the comments here. But Todd Gillitzer, not racing anymore. He did it for a few years. Actually pitted for Jeff Provenzino of all people, so both of them too a little bit feisty, right? And but he got after it for a little while, and he still goes to the track once in a while, sponsors a few people over at the Hibbing Raceway. But number 118, Bert, I have a few. Who do you got?
You mean 18?
18, my bad. You said you don't have a 118. Good grief. Yes, 18.
Well, obviously you got to start with the voodoo child, Black Sunshine himself, Scott Bloomquist. He's probably the most famous 18 out there. Also on the nationals.
We can't just give Scott Bloomquist 2 seconds, right? I mean, come on, right? So, honestly, if you're a dirt late model fan of any kind, whether you like him or you don't like him, he's probably the most polarizing driver to ever strap into a late model, right? You either love him or you hate him. Now he's getting old, right? So people are kind of like, whatever, it is what it is. But when he was at the top of his game, there wasn't too many people that didn't have an opinion of him, right? They either loved him or they absolutely hate him, but he sold the most T-shirts. And would you agree? If there was a Mount Rushmore of dirt late model drivers, is there even a question about him being on there?
No. Him and Billy Moyer, I think, would be the two definite drivers to be on the Mount Rushmore for dirt late model racing. But you mentioned that Scott Bloomquist is getting older, but he's still living his best life. Last year, I remember late in the year, there was a picture of him singing karaoke at a bar. And I don't know if you saw the video of him down in Florida. He was on some slingshot ride where it throws you up in the air. So
that got a lot of hits. I saw it. There was a pile of likes on there. Like, that is awesome. And I saw people that don't normally comment on Facebook. It was crazy. So the guy is still extremely, extremely popular. Do you have a number one or a Scott Bloomquist story? Anything stick out? On Scott? A lot. We have a lot that we could talk about with Scott Bloomquist. But is there anything in particular that you're like, this one time that sticks out?
Well, I can't remember if I told this story on the show or not, but I actually got a chance to interview him when he raced at Shawano one time. He won the race. I can't remember if it was a Have a Tampa race or Summer Nationals race, but he won the race. And I mean, you hear the stories about how he can be a little fickle sometimes and that sort of thing. I mean, granted, the fact that he won the race, probably helped put him in a good mood, but it's like he won the race. I got to try to get an interview with him for the local paper. And so, I mean, obviously, there's a whole slew of kids around him after the races getting autographs. So I just stood in the background, waited for him to sign all the autographs. And then when he was done, I introduced myself and, told him I was from the reporter from the local paper and I'd like to interview him about his victory. And he said, sure, come on into the hauler. So I got to go into his hauler. We sat down in his hauler and, I got to interview him. I mean, he was really cordial and very nice, but, so, you hear the story sometimes that he's not always so nice, but, my experience, experience with him was very good.
And I've heard that, right? I've heard that about him from multiple different people. They're like, if you look at him, right, especially when he was a little bit younger, you're like, he was intimidating looking, like, it's like, what is with this guy, right? He kind of looked like, the Undertaker or whatever. Like, he just kind of had that presence. But I've heard a lot of people say that he was super easy to talk to, pretty fun, obviously really loose, right? I mean, I heard a rumor. I don't know this to be 100% true, but I heard he won the Dream. I think it was a Dream, $100,000 to win. And by the next day, he'd spent all that money at the casino. So he parties hard, right? He's done it all. He's lived his best life. And I tell you what, there's nobody better, in my opinion, right now, as far as, I guess, legendary late model drivers. Scott Bloomquist has got to be.
And where Shawano Speedway is situated, there is a casino about 15 minutes away. So every time he would come to the area, I heard that he always gave the casino some business.
Yeah, I don't think Barry Braun has a hard time getting him out to Vegas. I think that's Vegas racing. We're there. We're automatically there because he can kill two birds with one stone. Who else do you have this number 18?
Oh, on the national scene, the other driver I have is Brandon Kinzer. He raced, well, I remember him from racing late models because when I would go to the World, he was usually always there. Never did very good, but he was always there with a very nice looking car. And I always thought to myself, why does this guy get so much press when he doesn't do all that well? But I actually went to his website to make sure that I got his name right and everything. And he must be racing modifieds now because his page was littered with pictures of him in a modified. So
yeah, I know he was for a while. I don't know what he's doing now. I haven't heard that name for a couple of years, but last I heard he was in a modified. Anybody on the local scene over there in eastern Wisconsin that number 18 comes to mind?
Yeah, I have two local drivers. One is Mark Weisnick. He raced late models at Shannon Speedway, northeastern Wisconsin in the late 80s, early 90s. When he raced late models, he was number 88, but then he switched to IMC modified and he ended his career in the number 18 car. Unfortunately, his career, he was in a pretty nasty accident a couple of years ago at Shannon Speedway, totaled his car out and didn't race at all that year or the rest of the year and then called it a career after the season was over. So, and the other number 18 is Cliff Eben, who raced late models at Shannon. He was from Appleton area. He raced late models in northeast Wisconsin in the 1980s, 1990s. And then he hardly ever had any sponsors on his car. He was just a driver that it was one of those cars. There's always a few of those at every track where it's a pretty plain car, no sponsors, but he could wheel it. I mean, he would get some feature wins against the tough late model field at Shawano. And last I heard, he was racing like asphalt road courses. Really? In like sports cars. Yeah.
Okay. Like up at like Road America, that type of stuff, or nationally, or
I'm not exactly sure where, but that's what I heard he was doing.
Okay. So I got a number 18 on the national level. See if you can get this right. This late model driver, he actually tied Billy Moyer this past year for the most wins on the Hell Tour.
Oh, yeah, Shannon Babb.
The Moequa Missile, Shannon Babb, right? He's on the pump. He's fun to watch. So Shannon Babb, I remember him when he must have been teammates with Billy Moyer, I think, at one point where didn't they have the yellow and red cars? They looked the same. I think they were teammates, and I remember the very first year, I believe it was at the Gateway Dirt Nationals. He didn't win, but he definitely put on the best show, charging the high side, left side off the ground, bicycling it, and just up on the wheel, fun to watch. Now on the local level here, I got a late model guy. Remember I talked last week about Rick Eggersdorf, me, Pat Dorr. We were 3 wide for the win at Cedar Lake on Tony Stewart night, and I mentioned there was a caution that kind of made that happen. Mike Hesslink, I believe, was number 18 in the late models. I think it was 18H actually is what it was. But he was a guy getting lapped. He ran supers. He ran late models. I don't think he's been involved with racing for a few years, but he ran many, many years over at the Cedar Lake Speedway in the super stock class, jumped up into the late models for quite a while, and he was that other guy that kind of created that incident with me and Tony Stewart. So Mike Hesslink. And then over at the Hibbing Raceway, so you think hobby stocks. When I first started racing, Bert, it was a 72 Impala. I'm talking, she was a boat, right? Now, it was a boat, but not compared to this guy. Mike Christensen had a huge station wagon. Not like the little wagons that you see in the pier stock. I'm talking like a massive, big boat station wagon. And he was fast. I mean, he won races in that thing. So he had a kind of a similar paint scheme. We kind of had a little bit of the Davey Allison look with the white, red, black, kind of that mixture. And when me and Gary Tuen came out with our car, we looked at Mike Christensen's and we're like, you got to be shitting me. We got the same kind of look here. Now, his was a wagon, ours was an Impala. And I'll be honest with you, that first year he was faster than both me and Gary. So there was no problem distinguishing us. One was at the front, one wasn't. Okay. Mike Christensen ran super stocks for quite a while too. Now, another guy, modified guy. Now, this guy here, I talked about him as a 16. He ran in a late model. He's ran sprint cars. He's ran super stocks. And he ran modifieds. And I remember him mostly in the modified. And Mike Rich, a driver from over in the Twin Ports, northern Minnesota. I think he's from, I don't know if he lives in Superior now, but I think he's originally from Duluth. But I remember, I think he got second or third in the Wissota National Standings one year. Incredibly talented race car driver. I mean, he's won in every single thing he's ever been in, and just a super nice guy. I think he still makes it once in a while. He's still around. I know he did some graphics, hasn't turned laps for a few years, but one of the nice guys down in the Twin Ports. And then another guy that I have is Jerry Mesner. Now, this guy was kind of a rival to me in the super stocks. He was pretty quick over from Bemidji, and he ran mostly the other way. He went to Bemidji, I think Greenbush, Grand Forks, and we were out at the Stampede in Jamestown. And I'm like, you know what? I got to slow this guy down a little bit. And I took the padlock, and I literally put the padlock on the back of his trailer, and I just locked it. And like the next day, I remember, I think Kaylee Emerson was there with them, and they're like, somebody locked their trailer. I'm like, well, that sucks. Like, what are you going to do about that? And I don't remember if I gave them the key or if they had to cut it off. I don't remember, but I do know that I locked it, and I should have probably left it. I think I might have won that night, but he was always fun to race against. And then another guy, here's one for you. South Dakota, former. Damn it, you got it right already. You're on.
It just popped into my head right before you started asking.
Former national champion, right? I mean, if you're a late model guy in the Wissota region, Kurt Gelling's the guy. I mean, he's won a lot of races. And his kid, probably the coolest thing I saw is they went 1-2 at the 50th annual Jamestown Stock Car Stampede this last fall. Of course, his kid won, Chase Gelling, and Kurt Gelling got second. Pretty cool story over there. Won a lot of races, still getting after it. not quite what he used to be, but he's still fairly competitive. I think it was last year or the year before, he was battling for the lead, and he probably wouldn't like me talking about this, but his tire fell off, battling for the lead with Scott Ward. I'm like, how does that happen, right? But he won a lot of races. Him and Arment had some hell of battles out in South Dakota. And then another guy, I got one last guy here from up in Thunder Bay, late model driver. Let's see if we can get this one. I don't know if you can. F18. Bobby Slater. So he used to come down to the States. He'd run beginning of the year down at Cedar. He'd run a lot of times he ran in Hibbing, Superior, Proctor. And back when I was in the late model class, I'm telling you what, man, I was way too broke to be in the late model class, but I was in it. And for whatever reason, we had a Fagler's car that first year or both years, and I went through all kinds of spindles. I mean, I'd like bump a tire, boom, spindle was destroyed. And I'm sick of bending spindles. And we're out there on the parade lap, and Slater's kind of weaving his tires, and I think I was too. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, I'm like, wham! He drives into the side of me on the parade lap. My tires go like this, bends my spindle. I'm like, I'm gonna kill this guy. Seriously, he bent my spindle on the parade lap, right? I'm like, I can't win. So that was my memory of him. But he came down, supported racing up in the Northland for quite a few years. Haven't seen him or heard from him in quite a while, but number 18 in the book. And any more thoughts? Any more people on number 18? I talked to Dobie. Dobie just texted me, by the way. I said, why were you number 118 in the Super? He goes, there may or may not have been some beer involved. He goes, no real reason. It was just one of them drunken ideas that me and Royne came up with. And Royne is Mark Royne, who builds TRC race cars, multiple national championships under TRC, home built deal come up in Hibbing, Minnesota. I won a national championship in a TRC car. And there's been a few ideas that have come up over a few cocktails in that camp. I can tell you that. So with that said, let's jump on to the next segment. We got some fan questions brought to you by Brad Carson and Soil Health. What he does, guys, is soil health and fertilizer efficiency, right? If you're looking to increase yields and increase profitability, he's got what you need. He's got a lot of different stuff that you can use, a lot of different products. Get a hold of him. 15-year track record in Minnesota and the Dakotas, and a racer, right? Support those who support us. And if you're not using his products, somebody near you probably is. But get a hold, farmers, get a hold of Brad Parson to get all what you need to get started here for this planting season coming up. So let's get into some questions. We got an email from one of our fans. I appreciate it. I think it's pretty cool when our fans reach out and they're like, hey, we got some questions, right? Some topics. And I think that's cool. And this is from Brent, and he sent a few of them, Bert. And the first one he put, back a few years ago, NASCAR started this whole racers are athletes, right? There was a really big push. Drivers are athletes. Race car drivers are athletes. I got some thoughts on this, but I want your thoughts.
Well, I mean, it depends what your definition of an athlete is. I mean, you look at the NASCAR drivers out there today. There are no. At least I can't think of any off the top of my head. Jimmy Spencer's out there who, drivers who are, a little bit bigger, out of shape. I mean, most of the NASCAR drivers, I would say, they're in shape. They do work out, they're athletes, but I mean, they're not athletes in the sense where, they can run fast. Well, maybe they can run fast, but we don't get to see that. But to hold that concentration in a car that's 100, gets to be over 100 degrees inside of it. And I mean, their heart rates are going like athletes, and, breathing is going like athletes. So it depends.
Let's take that to a more local level, right? Because let's be honest, they're driving around the highway on a oval, on a NASCAR. You get on some of these tracks where you're cowboy up and you're banging the cushion, and you get a 30, 40 lap feature, and the track's rough and it's choppy and sun's in your eyes. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. It could be on a local level too, not just NASCAR. Yeah. I'm talking on the local level, go on.
Cedar Lake Speedway, like at the USA Nationals in the early laps after they just farmed the track. I mean, yeah, those drivers are getting a workout because they're, to keep that car under control. And I mean, I guess you can look at, racing at, the name of the track is escaping my mind, in Illinois, the little boulder. Yeah, Fairbury. I mean, those drivers have to get a workout on that track. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, they are athletes. I mean, you can say that the bobsled people in the Olympics are athletes, and they just sit in a bobsled and let gravity take its course.
If they call the U.S. men's Olympic curling team, right? If they're considered athletes, race car drivers are athletes. And the captain, the skip of that team is from my hometown of Chisholm, Minnesota. Didn't medal this year. Tough break for the American team, but John Schuster, a Chisholm alumni, right? He's from Chisholm, lives over in Superior, Wisconsin now. You look at that team and you're like, those are not athletes, right? I'm drinking an Arnold Palmer, right? We've seen some golfers, right? I think Daly is one of them. He's a big boy, right? Not an athlete. Kent Herbeck for the Minnesota Twins. He didn't even look like an athlete. The guy was so overweight that was crazy. He just stood there at first base. He was good at what he did. But so I would say absolutely race car drivers are athletes. Every year when I raced, I would gain 20 pounds over the winter and I would lose 20 pounds over the summer, right? Because you're sweating it off, whether working on the car, get tires ready, racing, whatever, you're sweating it off. And as you can see, I haven't raced for a couple of years. So burning that off, the gaining part's been there. The burning it off part has not been there. So somebody do me a favor, get me a car. I just need it for a weight loss plan for the year. Help me out. But I would say drivers are athletes, absolutely.
Maybe talk to your insurance company. Maybe they'll cover that as a weight loss program.
Yeah, I got to be honest. It's worth a try. The worst they can say is no. Don't ask. The answer is always no. So the next question he had is, you start looking at, this is more on a regional, local level. You look at all the different classes, and let's be honest, there's way too many of them. Okay, but that's a discussion for another day. But you see some drivers out there, that are probably have the budget to race this class, but they're racing this class, right? And he actually brought up, and this is no knock on the guy from his part. He's like, but you take a guy like Shane Sobraski, that he's got the sponsorship, the funding, the budget to race whatever class he wants regionally. He could race late models and not, with the sponsorship dollars he has, have no issue doing it. Okay. Now, your thoughts as a fan, I'll talk on the driver's side. When you see a person like that has he's in a class where he's way out budgeting everybody else, do you think that person gets looked down on? Do you think they should move up? What is your thoughts on that whole deal?
Well, before I answer that question, we have situations like that in eastern Wisconsin also. Just for example, Mike Mullen, who's raced late models and IMCA modifieds, also races an IMCA stock car. Benji Lacrosse, one of the best modified racers around, also races IMCA stock cars. And I actually wrote a story about this for Dirt Monthly when Dirt Monthly magazine was still in operation, about the IMCA stock car class. And I asked some of the drivers what their thoughts were about drivers like Benji and Mike Mullen, who are accomplished drivers in different divisions that are considered above the IMCA stock car division. And nobody told me they were upset about it. Part of it could be because they didn't want to be known as a whiner in the article. But, what some of the drivers said was, them racing in the division makes me try harder to beat them. So, by me trying to beat them, that makes me a better driver and helps my racing program. So you can look at it that way. But I'm sure there's also people who think, why don't they just stay in those other divisions? I mean, they're too good to be racing in this division.
How about your perspective as a fan? What is your personal opinion?
See, I've always been a traditionalist where, I mean, this was when there was only like 2 divisions at Shannon Speedway. So it was drivers would start out in the one division, but the goal was to always get to the late model division. Now that all changed though with the introduction of all these other divisions. And me personally, I love watching Benji and Mike Mullen work through the field. You know, if they're starting in the back in the IMCA stock car division, I love watching them try to work their way through the field. And so from a fan's perspective, I don't think it's a bad thing. And from a fan, maybe it's just me, but I tend to like to root for the underdogs. So when the regular drivers,
yeah, student, yep.
So you know, when a driver from an upper division gets beat, you know, it's fun to watch that also.
So Nick, what he's saying is he wants you to lose. I'm just saying, I'm a fan of the 15. All right, Bert just got done saying he wants you to lose. I don't know, man. That's a little bold. But
Nick only races the late models, though. So
Nick,
it's not an
Bert
issue.
Lehman, LEH fan, if you're an Anviling fan, hit his Facebook up. Tell him what you think about him wanting Anviling to lose. Just kidding. Don't do that. So my thoughts on it is this, you know, and I touched on this a little bit last week, but Kenny Wallace mentioned this. Like, so many people have that pressure on them, like, well, you got to move up. You got to move up. You got to move up. And sometimes people come in and they got good equipment and all that, and you really don't truly know what their budget is, right? Like, I know people that had like really nice racing stuff and they lived in a cardboard shack, right? Like, literally every month, every dollar they had went to making their race program good. And you get to their shop, it's a little one-stall garage and a little beat-up house, and you're like, holy cow, your racing stuff is worth way more than everything else you have. So there is that. But I'll speak on Shane Sobraski. I've had this conversation with Shane. He lives in Rice, Minnesota, which is right by St. Cloud. There ain't a late model track anywhere to be found. And from what I understand, Granite City Motor Park is only running WISSOTA late models on a limited schedule this year. They tried it last year. They just did not get the following, even though they had a really good purse. As far as weekly pay goes, they were very solid on their pay. And they just said, you know, look, we didn't get the support, so they're going to run them more limited. So being where he lives, he would have to travel a bunch to even race the car, right? Because on a Thursday, he'd have to drive up to Rapids. There's only a couple Thursday tracks. Friday, he goes to Superior most of the time anyway. And if he doesn't, he goes to I-94, so that's a wash. But Saturdays, right? Saturdays, he likes to run over at Ogilvy, which is right down the road from his house. Well, he'd have to drive all the way to Hibbing to race on a Saturday. That's a long drive. Sundays, now with Granite City not running Sundays, he'd have to drive all the way to Proctor or all the way to Watertown. He can run Granite City right in his backyard with the classes he's in. So a lot of it's kind of geographic, like where do you live? You know, if there's not a lot of that class in the area. Number two is, you know, let's just be honest. Some drivers have more fun in a certain class. And at the end of the day, we're all competitive, but you want to have fun. And nothing against the late model guys, right? And Bert, this might hurt your feelings, but I'll be honest with you. I would rather watch a good street stock race, like a Steffes Street Stock Tour race. I'd rather watch that than half of the late model races, because a lot of the late model races lock down. It's hard to pass, and it's just crazy how much they're spending to just drive around in a train. Some of these other classes, you can move around on the track and you can get to the front. So, and as a racer, I wanted to race against the best. When I was in the super stock class, I felt like I was top tier. I won a bunch of national championships, and I didn't care who came down. I remember Daryl Nelson jumped in, I think, a guy's car in Superior one night. I'm like, so what? Harry Hansen did. These are late model guys. I'm like, so bring it, right? This is my class. You might be good in this class, but just because they drop down to another class or they're in this class down here, there's some extremely talented drivers in those other classes that aren't the higher classes, they just don't have the budget to be there. So the level of competition doesn't change. I've seen some very good modified and late model drivers jump down into street stocks, B mods, super stocks, and get their clocks clean, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean, well, he's a late model guy, he's going to win. That ain't how it works. So, and I talked to drivers about when they had the big showdown at Mississippi Thunder. I don't remember what it was called, maybe the BMOD Nationals or whatever it was. And you see some of these top tier guys coming in, and there was a mix, right, of drivers, the top drivers, right, the ones that were highly competitive, they wanted to win, your alphas, right? They're like, I don't care. Like, I'm good at what I do. If they want to come down, if they can beat me, hey, great. I want to race against good race car drivers. That's what I want. And the ones that really seem to complain are the ones that complain all the time, right? They complain about the people that are winning. They're like, oh, they must be cheating. They're spending too much, this and that and the other. It's always an excuse, right? So they're going to complain when there's another couple guys there. So I think I'm all for it. There's certain people out there. Remember Timmy Johnson and Shane did it too. They ran like 3 classes sometimes. You know, there was a time where if somebody would have given me a car in every class, I would have run every class. Why? Because I like racing, right? So I think it just depends on the situation. But I don't look down, and I don't think most people resent it. And I think that I think drivers just need to be racing, number one, where they can afford it, number two, where they're having the most fun, so they continue to do it. So the next question I have is, there's been a lot of emphasis on series, different stuff like that within our region, not just national, but within our region. Well, no matter what the class, you got the Steffa Street Stock Tour, you got the Rebel Midwest Mod Tour, the Mountain States Mod Tour, you have the Advantage RV Modified Tour, the Fastlane Super Stock Series, right? You have the Challenge Series, the NLRA Late Models. So you got all these series going on, and we've talked about this many times. Like, there's just not as much of an emphasis on track championships as there used to be. That used to be a big deal. 20 years ago, you won a track championship. That was a big deal because they didn't have all these series, right? So that's what you were racing for at the end of the day. Now, he asked, should tracks have throwaway nights for weekly races? So let's say that there's 15 races on the schedule at your local track. Should they take and say drop 1 or 2 of them and say we're going to take your best 13? Because that's how like the WISSOTA national standings work. They take your best 30 and less in a few of the classes, but they take X amount of shows. Should tracks maybe look at adopting that as far as track points
go? If a track would consider doing that, I would limit it to dropping only 1 night, maybe 2 at the most. I mean, from a track's perspective, the reason you want the drivers there every week because you want their fans there every week. So if you have a summer of racing where, say, you know, it would be like 15 nights, but you throw out 5 for a driver, you know, you're kind of defeating the purpose of trying to get the drivers to the track and getting their fans in the grandstand to watch them. So from a track's perspective, I don't think it's a good idea. And if they would do it, I would only throw out 1 night, 2 at the most.
I don't think they should throw any out. And so here's why. So you take the super stocks. A friend of mine, Kevin Saline, won his first track championship at the Hibbing Raceway this past season. Mikey Vidal won a super stock championship a couple years back at the Hibbing Raceway. I promise you, those track championships mean way more to them than it does to, like, say, Kevin Burdick, who was running for national championships and the Fastlane Superstock Series. It meant more to him because Burdick's won a bunch of championships. It doesn't mean as much to him. So that's going to give people a little bit of a chance. Hey, if these people want to go follow a series, great, go, right? And the people that support the racetrack, now maybe it's a new face winning that track championship. But I'm going to add this, right? If people want there to be a more emphasis on track points, well, then they need to incentivize it, right? So, like, when you got all these series races, you know, you take, use Midwest Mods as an example. that Rebel Midwest Mod Tour this year, all the races are 1,000 to win, every one of them, right? Now with that, the last one's $5,000, so I believe it's $5,000. It was last year. Now with that said, a regular B mod win, Bert, is like $300 ish. Some as low as $250, some maybe $350, but it's around $300 to win. So you can look at it and go, well, I'll just miss a couple nights. I'm racing for 1,000 to win. That'll, we get paid. I don't even know what they get paid to win a track championship in a B mod. Maybe $500, something like that. So there's really no incentive financially to do it. So if you want more of an incentive, quit scheduling all these series. Again, as a fan, I like them. As a driver, I like them. But put more of an emphasis on local weekly racing and get some sponsors. Hibbing Raceway used to always have a point fund, and they haven't for a few years. But the Viking Speedway in Alexandria, they went out last year and they got sponsors to incentivize it. And I don't remember what the pay was. I don't think it was like massively huge. But the more that you incentivize it, the more people are going to want to follow it. You have to make it appear as though it's important, right? And no different than the challenge series. They didn't promote it. People didn't think it was important. They didn't go. So if you want to, I don't think it's about having throwaway nights. I think it's about making that championship mean something. And the only way to do that for drivers is make it mean something. Pay them and they'll show up. And that's kind of the way I look at it. So let's, anything you want to add on that, Bert, before we jump on to the next segment here?
No, I think we covered that. I mean, we both pretty much agree on it. I mean, like I said, at most 2, but I agree. I mean, don't throw any out, but if you would throw any out, you really need to limit the number that you throw out.
And to add on that too, I think a lot of tracks are pretty good at, if there's something in the area, right? And, it used to be if there's one or a couple specials a year, maybe track B over here has a late model special. Well, this track over here would be like, I tell you what, we're just going to drop late models for the night so they can go to that special. The problem is when there's a freaking special every single week,
right.
Pretty soon you can't do that anymore, right? So It comes down to promoters are their own worst enemies in this deal, and they got to kind of rethink how they're doing things, in my opinion. So let's jump on to a little bit of racing last weekend, and we both watched the features. Not a lot happened. World of Outlaw Sprints rained out, of course, but the Driving Extreme Dirt Car Late Model Series, they had a couple races this past weekend. And what stuck out to you there?
Overton in Victory Lane, but not the Overton that you're used to in Victory Lane. Cody Overton won his first ever Super Late Model feature, so he won that in Friday night show. So
little sexy.
Started on the front row and led the entire race. The race wasn't that exciting, but there wasn't much else for racing to watch. So
right. Now Jeff mentioned, and I didn't realize this. He tried making a joke, and I didn't get it. And he's like, "Well, if you don't get it, it's not funny." He was all butthurt, right? So Jeff pointed out, he goes, he's like the Kyle Busch, right, of late model racing. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, well, evidently Kurt Busch said, "Man, if you think I'm good, wait till you see my little brother." And evidently, I don't know. Evidently, Brandon Overton said that at some point too. I'm not sure, but kind of that deal. Brandon Overton, you think I'm good? Wait till you see my brother Cody. He's up on the wheel. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's tough to be Brandon Overton good. I think he's got his work cut out for him, but I guess we thought that about Kurt Busch. He's a former NASCAR champion as well. So Cody Overton is first, probably of many. He's up on the wheel. It'll be interesting. Couldn't quite get it done in a Wasota Superstock, though. I'm just saying. He did run one of those, and he didn't win in that. So Jeff Krause whooped up on Cody Overton, but Cody Overton got his first super late model win. So that kind of equals out. How about night number 2?
Night number 2, there's not really controversy, but the guy who crossed the finish line first was not awarded the victory because he did not get the thumbs up at the scale. Brent Dixon crossed the finish line first, but did not meet weight, which gave the victory to Kenny Collins. So one of those being light at the scales can be very newsworthy. Were you ever light at the scales?
No, Scott Bloomquist incidentally wasn't, right? We kind of heard the story there. In all my years of racing, and I was skinnier, so no fat jokes, skinnier, okay? But I was never, ever, never. I don't understand, right? Like, I mean, things happen. And I remember going to the Proctor Speedway, and the first thing we did is go across the scales because you had no idea what it was going to be, right? It was different every week. So we'd go across the scales, and we'd be like, let's just make sure that we know we're good. I don't understand why somebody would be light. I mean, why are you playing it that close? It doesn't make any sense to me. I understand, you want to be a little lighter, that's quicker, whatever. But, man, I was never light. Ever. Now, that leads me to this, right? So people being like, that's one thing. So Donkey awarded there to Brent Dixon on throwing one away. Congratulations to Kenny Collins on your free gift, because that's just, in my mind, that's stupidity. Unless something broke or something happened to the carburetor and it flushed all the fuel down the cylinders or whatever, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. But thinking back here, remember Ryan Gustin about a week ago? We didn't talk about this on the show. He won one night at Volusia, right? Did you see what happened to him on the next night?
No.
He pulled off on like lap 3 because he forgot to put tear-offs on his helmet. So you start looking at some of these mental blocks that people have, right? Being light at the scales, let's be honest, that's a mental block. You messed up. Probably forgot to put fuel in. You miscalculated. That's an error. That's just unforgivable. That's throwing money away. I was broke. I couldn't afford to be light. I needed a check to get to the next track. I don't get how people are light, but I've seen people, Bert, and you've probably seen this over in your neck of the woods too. DQ'd, forgot to go to the scales. DQ'd, forgot to go to tech. I'm here to tell you that all year long, if you forget to go to scales or forget to go to the tech and you get DQ'd, you're an idiot and you're getting a donkey award, because that's just stupid. How do you not? I mean, it's a brand new person, never raced before. They got their first top 5 ever. They forgot whatever. But if you've been racing, I've seen people, Bert, that have raced for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're like, I got DQ'd. I forgot to go to the scales. How? How's that a thing? I don't get it. How do you, in my lifetime, I have never, ever in my entire life forgot to put tear-offs on. That's the driver's job. Ryan Gustin,
no.
It should be the frickin' driver's. It was your job, Brent. Okay.
Yeah, that was my job for MJ.
I always did my own helmet. Maybe I was OCD or whatever. But the driver is the one who ultimately puts the helmet on. You have to grab the helmet. You have to look at the helmet. And hey, dummy, no tear-offs, right? How is that a thing? So all these mental things, right? It's no wonder you start looking at that and you're like, how in the hell do these people go down the straightaway and even remember how to turn left? I don't even get it. When you forget to scale, when you're light, when you forget tariffs, if you run out of tariffs on a mud hole, which don't happen often anymore, that's one thing. But when you forget to put tariffs on, what, right? Some of these things, I shake my head and I'm like, it's no wonder some of these guys. And you look at Gustin, he's talented, right? But he's up and down. Maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe some people are way more focused than others, and that's going to relate to success. So, and I get it. People have life happening and stuff going on, but I just don't understand it. I mean, did MJ McBride ever go out on the racetrack and like not have tear-offs on his helmet?
Not while I was doing them. I mean, I don't know if he did during his career. I mean, you talked about, running out of tear-offs in a mud hole. I mean, there would be times if the track was heavy, I would ask him, do you want extra tear-offs on your helmet? And, he would, tell me yes or no. And, so we, we would be in communication as to how many tear-offs he wanted on his helmet. And now he did pull off the track once on the white flag lap because he thought the race was over.
Zito did that incidentally, gave me a win. Jeff, thank you for that. Gave me a win. I was in Grand Rapids. I've seen that done a time. I never did that either. Another thing that's happening, last year had to be the most I've ever seen of people having tires fall off their cars. I never seen. Last year was by far the most. We should keep track of it this year, but it was a lot last year. There was several times where like tire fell off.
That was my job too, was to torque the tires before every race.
Right. They all blame the pit lifts, right? They're like, well, it's a pit lift thing because they drop the car down and go. No, that's a stupidity thing. You forget to tighten your lug nuts, you're just an idiot. I don't know how else to put it. Like, seriously, how's that? Some of these things I was OCD, like way over the top OCD with things, but I always felt if I fell out of a race because of a mental error or a lack of maintenance, something that I could have prevented, I let my fans down, I let sponsors down, I let everybody down. I didn't let my competition down, but I let everybody else down. And I couldn't afford to do it, right? I needed the check. Some of these guys, they're like, well, this guy over here pays for it, so I guess it is what it is. It's on him. I get paid the same. I needed the money. I had to have the money to get to the next race. I couldn't afford to have these mental lapses. Is that more common today than it was before?
I don't know if it's more common today than it was before. I don't know. I mean, I was, other than a Bloomquist being late, I was at the race. Probably the most famous driver being late was at the World 100. I can't remember the year, but do you remember who was late?
I thought Scott Bloomquist was the most famous driver.
Well, I said other than Scott
right.
Bloomquist. He's number 18. You mentioned him earlier in the show.
Babb was late?
Yeah, he was at the World 100. He was 10 pounds light. He won the race. He was 10 pounds late, but he had to change motors between the heat race and the feature. So I don't know if the two motors weighed different. But yeah, he was 10 pounds light, and he's never gotten back to that point again, to having a chance to win the most prestigious race ever. Dale McDowell wound up winning the, was named the winner. And I remember his interview afterwards. I mean, he was very, he wasn't very happy. He said, I'll take the win, but him being 10 pounds light didn't help him. That's not why he won the race, why Babb won the race, but that's the rule. I mean, you have to make weight.
Well, Rick Auckland should have double slept up at the Labor Day shootout, and I believe it was a modified. He won, he was light, and that was Steve Vessel got the win. And of course, we talked about Steve Vessel. He has Labor Day shootout wins in 4 classes. His win in the modified came as a result of Rick Auckland being light, right? So I don't know. I mean, so I get it. Some people are playing close. They're playing that game. But, man, if you're not sure, I mean, you're better off being a few pounds heavy than playing that game. It just don't make sense to me. Why take that risk? Create some balance, find a place on the car where you can add some lead where it doesn't screw up the overall balance of the car. Don't be light. I mean, come on. That deal with Babb, I can't even imagine. With a World 100, right? The biggest race in all of dirt late model racing, winning it, and just the overall joy, right? And then all of a sudden being like, well, sprint cars last year. Was it the Kings Royal? They had a double header at Eldora. In the second feature, I don't remember who it was. The second place car was light. And it was like 75,000 to win or some crazy thing like that, right? So it's kind of that would be painful. That I don't think I'd forgive myself for that. So, Bert, let's get into some who's hot, who's not, brought to you by Blue Line Brews. And if you're a coffee drinker, check them out, bluelinebrews.com. A certain amount of their proceeds goes to the families of fallen officers, to the families of injured officers. They got K-Cups now. And it's just a great program they have to support those that help us have the freedoms that we have, right? They support the men in blue, the men and women in blue, So Blue Line Brews, check them out and get yourself some coffee. It's that time of year. We're all cold. You need something hot to drink. So, Bert, who do you got? Who's hot?
Well, we don't have many choices this week because there wasn't much racing taking place. So I'm going to go with Cody Overton for winning his first ever super late model feature.
And he showed some signs of speed at Volusia. I mean, there were some times where he was pretty quick and maybe just not consistent, maybe made a couple errors. I think he's got the speed. I think he's going to win some races.
I'm not sure what happened the second night because he started in the 20s in the feature, but he advanced at least 10 spots during the feature. So, even though he didn't qualify well, he was still able to advance, move forward, and that's that's a key for a good driver.
Another one of those young guns that we get to keep an eye on throughout the 2022 season. Now, Bert, mine's not going to be very popular. It's not. NASCAR. NASCAR. I'm telling you, the crowd that I saw at Daytona, right? And I get it, they got rid of some seats, but I mean, it was electric. And the crowd that I saw, and you mentioned earlier, there was some empty seats. There was electric at Fontana. Like there was a good crowd, a good following, a lot of energy. I like these new cars. I hate the paint schemes. That number on the front of the door, oh my God, it's terrible looking, like unbelievably. Now, if certain drivers, if it makes sense and it looks right with the paint scheme, cool, do it, right? I get it. But all the cars with the numbers on the front of the doors is god awful. But I kind of like these new cars, right? They seem like they're on top of the track. They're a little bit freer. You see people spinning out a little bit, right? And what I like about that is I think there's more driver involved. It's a little bit more even. I think the racing's been pretty good as compared to what I've seen in the past. So I'm still a dirt guy. I'm definitely a dirt guy, but I'm gonna give 2 thumbs up, I guess, to NASCAR right now. They're kind of heading in the right direction. It's kind of good to see the advancement, so to speak, and maybe changing things up a little bit. So kind of excited for that. Who do you have on who's not?
Got to go with Brent Dixon for being light at the scale.
Yeah, that's a donkey. That's a donkey for sure. I'm gonna go with the Hoosier tire situation. So got an email from my race pass, and there was kind of a press release on different tires, and I'm telling you, drivers, it is not looking real good, right? I've seen different tracks post, hey, we're going to allow American racers and the Hoosiers. I've seen different things going on to just make things work. I don't know what's going to happen with Soda, with the tire situation, but Hoosier had a press release out, and they said the natural resources, that part of it is worse. They're hoping to get the production side of it as far as employees up because they were way down last year. And they openly said right on this email that they were forcing people to work overtime and stuff like that. And they changed their practices and they got to hire more people because people were quitting because they were working way too much. So the Hoosier tire situation, I'm not excited about it. I think that right now is who's not, and it's going to be an interesting start to the season. So drivers, get tires. That's all I'm going to say. Get creative. I don't care how you got to do it. You start getting tires, and you're going to have to start keeping track because who knows? I mean, it might go from bad to worse, and you might get into a time of the year where you're racing specials or whatever, and you're like, I got no tires. So get tires and be smart about how many nights you run them. Because, if you're racing for $300 to win, do you really need to put 2 brand new tires on for $300 to win? Okay. I felt like, yeah, I probably should, but it don't financially make sense. Save your tires for the big shows. So when the track's put on these shows that are paying a little extra money, so on and so forth, you can be there to support it. So save your tires and be smart about it.
And when drivers are at a big show, if drivers are throwing tires out, grab what you can if you're a low buck. I mean, actually, one of my freelance writers for Full Throttle last year did a story about a sport mod driver who raced at Bristol last year. And he said that there were piles of used tires in the infield, and he grabbed as many as he could that still had decent tread on so he could use them during the season.
That makes me think of back in my hobby stock days when I first started racing. I was 15 years old, me and Gary Toon, we didn't have any money. Like our car, we each paid $600. We had $1,200 into a race car. You can't do that today, not even with a Hornet. And we would literally go to Hibbing, to the salvage yard, not the salvage yard, but the garbage dump. And they had a big tire pile. And we'd be digging through the tires going, that one looks good and that one looks good. And we go over to Larry Mackey's and then Bo V, and he'd give us a couple tires. And we didn't have a new tire on the car. Now, I get it. It's different now. I get it. But that's a good point. I mean, there are drivers out there that run them one night and get rid of them. Okay? So what you need to do, this is a smart thing to do. If you're a driver and you're on a lower budget, become buddies with some of these people that do that, right? You take your Sobraskis and your Brokings and the people that they put new tires on a little bit more often than most people do. Become friends with them and get on a program to like every week you're getting their used tires. Andy Davey used to do that. He used to race in Bemidji on Sundays. I'd go to Proctor and he'd come over because I'd put new tires on like every 3 nights in the Super. And I remember him coming over and they'd be buying all my used ones. And he was fast. He won races with my used ones. I probably should have ran them longer. Hell, he beat me sometimes. So definitely that's a good idea. Start grabbing those tires from people when you can. So, Bert, let's get into our Sure Bet of the week, brought to you by J. Schmidt Real Estate in Watertown, South Dakota. Whether you need commercial, land, residential real estate transactions for racers, by racers, he'll help you out. Big racing family. They've been a part of the sport for many years. His dad still races. His kid races, right? Get a hold of Jay. Been in business for 20 years. The lock of the week in the South Dakota region, J. Schmidt Real Estate. Bert, who is your Sure Bet of the week?
He hasn't won yet this year, but Brad Sweet is going to get at least one win this weekend.
The Big Cat. I see you picked him for both nights. I picked him for one. Kind of a homer. I picked him in shots. That was my picks up there. But I'm going to go with Rodney Sanders. Now, Rodney Sanders, so they got the USMPS starting out. Remember, it's $100,000 to win the championship, but they're starting out the 12th annual Texas Spring Nationals at the Rocket Raceway Park in Petty, Texas. He got 3 wins in Vado. So he started off good. He just got married. That's another win. Maybe. Just kidding.
Yeah, maybe.
But Rodney Sanders, I tell you what, he's a wheel man. It's hard to count out to 20. My Sure Bet of the week, he's going to win at least one, if not both of them, down in Texas for the opening weekend of the USMTS. So, Bert, let's get into the last lap. Brought to you by Zuli's Race Engines. Get a hold of Frank Zuli. This is the time of year. It's getting close to race season. We're right there right now. Hopefully you got a Zuli's race engine coming. If you don't, you might get beat by one. If you still need yours freshened, get a hold of him. He can fit you in the calendar somehow, some way. But Zuli's race engine's been building winning power for quite a number of years, and they're going to continue to do so in 2022. But I talked about it a little bit. USMTS going to Texas. But Kyle Larson, right? We talked about him. It's like, man, I think he's kind of washed up. He can't win anymore. Then he goes ahead and he wins from last. He won from last because he had some kind of an ignition box deal. He had to change something in the ignition, and he had to come from last. Now, interesting, last, did you notice, was 36th. They didn't have 40 cars. They only had 36 chartered drivers, which is interesting in itself. But Kyle Larson getting it done, but not without a little bit of controversy. Okay? So I want your take on this. So I'm going to show the little clip right now. They're battling for position here. Him and his teammate, of course, Chase Elliott. And he's side drafting off a guy, takes a hard right-hand turn, bam, gets into Elliott into the fence. Now, me, it didn't look like it was that hard of contact, but it sounds like it did some damage. First thing that tells me, Bert, is they need to toughen up these race cars a little bit, because if that little bit of contact with the wall wrecked a bunch of stuff, quit making stuff so light. Let's make things a little bit more durable, right? So they can get after them a bit. Number two, the question I have for you is, later on in the race, Kyle Larson has a big lead. He's checked out, almost a second lead, maybe more, but he's checked out. Looks like the race is in hand, only a handful of laps to go. And Chase Elliott spins around in a circle. Did he spin out on purpose?
I mean, that thought never crossed my mind as I was watching it. I don't think he spun out on purpose, but I don't know. Obviously, only one person knows that. But getting back to the contact that Larson had with Elliott, I don't know if you saw this, but Larson's spotter took the blame for that because he said that he was more concerned about the car on the inside of Kyle than he was about Chase on the outside. So he took the blame for not being quick enough in telling Kyle that Chase was on the outside of him.
You're right, but it happens so fast, right? Because he's side drafting, and Chase Elliott did you can call it a Kyle Larson move, right? I mean, he was right behind him, and he just shot up to the outside. I mean, it was like that. It's not like he was coming on the outside. He was behind him, and basically the spotter said, I thought he was going to like follow him and give him a push by. And instead he went 3 wide and was going to try to pass both of them, and the contact ensued, and Chase Elliott was not extremely happy with that. And I don't know. He says he did not spin out on purpose, but I don't know. I was texting with my buddy Krause, and we're watching it during the race, and it's like, I don't know. Like, he was really upset and mad about that contact. And next thing you know, just in the middle of nowhere, he spins out by himself. He said something broke on the car. I don't know. It looked to me like Kyle Larson had a big lead, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and spin out and try to screw him out of the race. And he did lose the lead, right? And he got it back. He forced his way back to the lead on the bottom. And he drove a hell of a race. But what kind of an advantage is that, right? Because if you win a race, you're locked into the chase, right? Uh-huh. So now he has the whole season to just race to win, because he don't have to care one bit about points because he's locked in, right? So now, what kind of an advantage is that for a race team to get a win early in the season so you can just concentrate on winning the rest of the way?
Well, I mean, it's a big advantage. It takes a lot of pressure off you, obviously, and it also allows you to try some things. It's maybe you wouldn't go so far on an adjustment, but you're already locked in. You can try it and see how the car is going to react, and that may help you in the playoffs. If it's at a track that you're going back to again during the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't think about that. Very well said. So let's jump into our current standings. Of course, we were going to pick the World of Outlaw Sprints last week. Mother Nature won both of those events. Bert, you're leading the way, 28. Jeff's at 23. Puka's at 21. And I'm kind of sucking a little bit here, Bert. I'm at 18. And my buddy Mike, who watches the show, regular fan of the show, he texted, he goes, you know what? I want to be part of this. A, I need something to do, and B, you're in last, and I'm pretty sure I can still beat you. I'm like,
well, I don't. Yeah, you might be able to, because Puka missed a week, and he's 3 points ahead of you.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's not how you start; it's how you finish. So we'll see what comes. But Mike's jumping in on that, and we're picking the World of Outlaw race. Of course, upcoming events: World of Outlaw Sprint Cars this weekend. And they are down in Texas. Where exactly are they at in Texas? I don't have it in front of me. No, they're not. They're not in Texas. Are they? Yeah, they are in Texas. They got a double header there in Texas. So we've talked about, you pick Sweet both nights. I pick Sweet and Shots respectively. The World of Outlaw Sprint Car Racing over the last couple of years, has it or has it not got your attention as a late model?
Oh yeah, I've watched it more, so I can talk somewhat intelligently on the show about it. But yeah, the sprint cars are very fun to watch, and I'm thinking about going to, because the World of Outlaws are in Beaver Dam for 2 nights this year, so I'm thinking about going there for one of the nights this summer.
Yeah, you have to let me know as it gets closer because they put on a hell of a show, and it's a show, right? It's not just a race. They got great announcing. They got all the extra stuff. It's a spectacle. The World of Outlaws. Looking forward to that here this weekend. USMTS mods getting underway. They got a double header down, I believe, at the Rocket Raceway Park, and we got some guys heading down from up north. I don't have all of them. I don't have the whole list of all of them, but rumor has it that Tyler Cater and Tayton Hansen, a couple of young guns, teenagers, modified guys. Tyler Cater's won some races. Tayton Hansen is coming into his own. They're making the trip down. Of course, Dan Ebert, who ran very well, looking for his first USMTS win. And I'm telling you what, as far as Wissota modified drivers go, right, he's top three. I mean, the guy's extremely talented, okay? So I know you're not a mod guy, but you know, you've watched enough over the last year, okay? 0 wins last year. He dominated. When he came into Wissota, he cost Nebraska a championship with a last lap pass on him at Ogilvie at the end of the year at the Fall Classic, okay? And I think he won 3 races of 4 that he entered in the Advantage RV Mod Tour. This cat's good, okay? Over and under 5 wins. Let's do this. I'll bring it down just a little bit because he had 0 last year. 3 wins for the 60 of Dan Ebert in USMTS racing in 2022.
Can I take the push of 3? Okay,
Yep.
I'll take the push.
I'm going to go over because he got close and he got faster. He gained some experience at these tracks. He started to get a feel of the American racer tire. He's very, very knowledgeable as far as shocks and setup and all that. So I think they built a good notebook from last year to carry on into this season. Not only do I say the 60 is going to win some races, don't be surprised if he contends for a championship in the USMTS. Landon Atkinson, another guy, talented driver. He's heading down. In last year, Bert, he ran the majority of the season with a Wissota motor, which you can compete at some tracks. Some tracks you're just way outclassed with a Wissota motor at a USMTS show, but it sounds like they have the right pieces in place. And he ran really good. He came from really deep at the Mod Wars deal at Ogilvie, and I think he was up in the top 5 for sure. I think maybe even a little higher than that. But I'm looking for Landon Atkinson to maybe turn things around, run pretty good. And then Jason Good from Watertown, South Dakota. Of course, his dad runs the Casino Speedway. He's going to be making the trip down there. I don't know who else is. I'm looking forward to that action. Looking forward to see who makes the trip. A little bit of late model racing going on this weekend. Ray Cook's Spring Nationals is getting underway. And I don't know who's going to be there. I think them are both 10,053 to win 53,000 or 53 laps. Of course, Ray Cook's he's the one who kind of came up with the droop rule type deal. Smoky Mountain, right, is racing for 12,000. And I believe Marlar is going to be at that. And one guy that I'm interested there, Ricky Weiss, is going to be in attendance at Smoky Mountain. Now, that's a guy that we've been talking about. He's a northern guy, so I consider him one of ours. And he's been doing some testing. He skipped out on speed weeks. He looked pretty competitive the last couple nights over in Vado earlier this year. Any thoughts, any predictions on either one of these 2 shows?
The late model shows? Well, like you said, I'm not sure who's going to be there either. If Marlar is going to be at one of them, I'll take Marlar at the one that he's going to be at.
So over and under on Ricky Weiss, okay? Over and under, 3rd place finish.
I'll go under.
Under as in like worse than that?
What, first or second?
Oh, okay. So you're going to go like he's going to,
Yeah.
All right, you're better than 3rd. And I'm going to, reluctantly, I'm going to say that he's not going to get a top 3. I'd like to see him win, but I think I expect him to run well. I don't think he's going to get a top 3, but I can see him maybe battling for that top 5 position. I think Jimmy Owens is expected to be at that race as well. I haven't seen anything from the Southern Nationals races. I looked at Overton's site, it didn't say. I looked at Madden's site, it didn't say. Kind of thinking that's kind of down in their region. I wouldn't be surprised, a couple 10 grand to win shows to see them there. But right now, that's why we're not picking them for the pick'ems. It's like, hell, we don't even know who's going. So that's kind of the interesting thing. And with all the money on the line, what's your thoughts on that? This is going to be maybe a telltale sign, right? I know Ashton Winger is going to be at those races. He's going to be at Cherokee runs on Sunday as well. They run, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Ashton Winger, do you expect to see maybe him park at Victory Lane one of the 3 nights, if not more, this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great possibility if he's going to be there. I mean, he is a top driver in the country now. And but yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on the show where, a $10,000, $12,000 show, drivers are, I'm going to save my equipment or, take my rest vacation now because I'm going to be racing all the big shows, later in the summer. So, it could hurt the name recognition for some of these smaller shows. I mean, take the Extreme Series from this last weekend. I mean, the most well-named driver there was Ross Bales. I mean, I looked at Overton because of his brother, right. But I looked at the finishing order, and it's like I didn't recognize hardly any of the names in that list. And I mean, last year, Brandon Overton raced some of those races. Madden raced those races. So,
Strickler was at those.
Yep. So, some of these smaller shows, I think, are going to lose some of the name drivers.
That's going to be very interesting. I'll be very curious to see who's in attendance this weekend. But I got to be excited. I'm pretty excited, right? I mean, we got this weekend. We had a couple weekends off there after Speed Weeks. There's a lot of racing online this weekend. A lot, right? You got the sprint cars, the modifieds. You got multiple late model events. I mean, if you're sitting at home in the northern part of the country and you're cold and you're sick of winter, you can jump online and there's plenty of racing to be watched. I'm personally going to jump on. I'm most excited probably about the modifieds just because I know some guys are going to head down there to Texas. I want to watch our locals. Good luck to all the guys heading down to Texas this week with the USMTS. I'd like to see the WISSOTA guys represent well. They have so far this year, right? Tyler Peterson at the Dome. Tyler Peterson ran good down at Vado. Our WISSOTA guys ran good when they went to Vegas. Our WISSOTA guys, ran well. I think, Aaron Blacklance won the Midwest Mod deal down at Vado. So, I mean, they've been running good. I mean, we got some of the best drivers in the country in our area, and I think that they're going to represent well. I was looking at the 2020 page on Facebook. Troy and Jonathan Powers do that page, and kind of a cool announcement. The 50th annual Silver 1000, second longest running late model race that's been at the same track, right? This will be the 50th year. And check it out, 2020 racing page group. You can look at that on Facebook. There's some particulars there. The fans can actually add to this, and they're looking at doubling or more of the purse. And their goal is they want it to be $5,000 to win or better, $500 to start for the late models. And that's going to be Labor Day weekend. The Thursday leading into Labor Day weekend is when the Silver 1000 is. But hats off to the Proctor Speedway, to Troy and Jonathan Powers for putting that together, because that's a place I never won in the late model. I did win that race in the mod, so I did get it done there. Kelly Essie stole one from me in the modified too, where I thought I had a shot. But Proctor Speedway, Bert, for me, growing up, and not growing up, I guess Hibbing was my track growing up, but as I started racing for championships, that really became more of my home track feel. My pit guys were from down in that, most of my pit guys, and I just loved racing at the Proctor Speedway, and I guarantee that's a place I'm looking forward to being to. So hats off to those guys. And any closing thoughts before we shut off chapter 118?
No, just it's every day's been in the 30s around here. There's been a lot of snow melting, so race season's getting closer. There's a car show in Clintonville, Wisconsin, in not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. So, we'll get to see some cars. And so, and Bristol's not that far away. So,
I think the season starts in Illinois sooner than it does in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And my buddy Dave Dulciak, I know that he's got a new car, won the championship last year. Sounds like he's going to start a little bit early. Might make a trip down to Fairbury. And his cousin Brian, he's got a new car coming as well, I believe. So a couple people I'm looking forward to help. So spring is coming. We're close. We're into March. Racing season's right around the corner. Again, race fans, Bert, do you have any close? I think you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just saw a picture on Facebook tonight, though, of Cedar Lake Speedway, and it's completely snow covered yet. So they got some melting that has to take place there yet.
Bert, I'm trying to end the show on a positive. Now you come on, I'll be negative. I don't understand. Like, you need to work on that a little bit. So just picture in your mind, spring is in the air. It's coming. We're into March. Racing season right around the corner. Lots of racing action this weekend. I'm Ryan. That is Bert. Fans, thanks for tuning in to the One to Go Show.